comes from Matthew 3 and into Matthew 4. If you'd like to follow in the church Bibles, it can be found on page 967. Matthew 3, beginning at verse 16. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting upon him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. After fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. Amen.
And that means we're going to try and draw our attention through Lent to some things. We're continuing through our series on the Lord's Prayer. And I thought I'd offer us a challenge. This challenge is actually being widely taken up by the Anglican Church. I'm very pleased with that, the Church of England. It's being taken up very strongly by the Church of Scotland and by a lot of URCs and other churches, a focus on plastic. Actually, it's quite a public focus on plastic right now, which I really, really welcome. Martin mentioned that we've just registered as an eco-church. And with us registering, we have taken the URC over 100 eco-churches registered. Not that many have got bronze yet, but there's over 100 URCs now registered as eco-churches, and the aim is that we'll actually eventually have the entire URC registered and every synod registered as an eco-synod, which has just been created for us specially by A Rocha, so that we can have a regional eco stuff as well. Well, two things which you might want to think about during Lent. To my mind, there is no point in giving something up for the sake of giving something up. I don't see how that glorifies God at all. God doesn't particularly like suffering or deprivation. Therefore, unless me giving something up in some way helps me grow as a Christian, and it might, but that will need to be its aim. It's not just it's Lent, I give something up. It's Lent, what can I constructively do that reminds me that I'm a disciple of Jesus and helps me grow as a disciple of Jesus? I'm going to suggest to you during these weeks of Lent that you might like to cut down your use of plastic. We are on course at the present time, I forget how many years, about 10 years' time, on current performance, I'll get the right date for you next week, we will have more plastic in the sea by weight than we have fish in the seas of planet Earth. That's what we're doing, okay? And I'm really welcoming the fact that there's a lot of public interest now in the business of plastic. We'll be doing something practical about it later in the year, in the summer, a big plastic clean-up along the coastline. More on that in due course. But in Lent, here's something you might do. When you go shopping, you might look at the packaging of what you're about to buy, and you might decide that you can manage a version of that product without so much packaging. You might decide all kinds of things about plastic. None of us can give plastic up, and I don't think we should. More about that again another time. It's not time now. But we can certainly massively reduce our use of plastic. We have lived for thousands of years without it at all. When most of us were growing up, very little was done in plastic, right? Relatively little. We don't need to do what we do. The only reason so much comes wrapped in plastic is because we're prepared to buy it. That's the only reason. So the best thing is for us to reduce what we are willing to buy that comes with plastic, just to reduce it. So here's a challenge for Lent. Give up using quite as much plastic as you do. Right? Don't try and stop using plastic. Give up using quite as much as you do. And also, see if you can't do something to give up something that reduces your carbon footprint. And you might think, well, I don't drive, so I can't do that. But actually, you can do that, again, when you go shopping. You can look and see how far food has been transported. And you can think about buying local more. Right? Doesn't mean you have to cut out all foreign foods or something. But just, what can you do to say, actually, let me buy stuff that hasn't had to be transported quite as far, hasn't been flown in from Kenya or something like that, and start reducing it, okay? And it's a process by which we reduce our consumption of plastics and our consumption of things that take a high carbon footprint. We reduce that. We start doing stuff to soak up carbon, tree planting and so forth, whatever we can do. And do something about carbon this Lent. Don't try and change the whole world in 1 6-week period, but adjust your own lifestyle for those 6 weeks. At the end of the 6 weeks, you may have discovered that you can live a little differently anyway. Yeah. So guess what the challenges are? Giving it up, but giving it up for the glory of God. I'd like to talk to you about the Lord's Prayer again this morning. And we've been through parts of the Lord's Prayer, what I think of as the first part of the Lord's Prayer so far. The Lord's Prayer begins with the Father of us, the one in the heavens. Do you remember that? Some weeks back that we started. Father of us, the one in the heavens, our Father who art in heaven. Right? Father of us, the one in the heavens. And then the prayer, so that's who we're talking to in the prayer. Right? And then the prayer goes, may your name be honored as holy. Right? Or hallowed be thy name. That's the first request, that God's name be honored. The second request is that his kingdom comes, because we see the need for his kingdom to come, don't we? Martin's highlighted for us, the Oxfam issue this week. And it's horrible to think that people will now withdraw support from aid agencies, and the result will be suffering. Right? Because people will go, oh, you can't trust them or whatever, because you're not sure what they're up to, and I always thought they were corrupt, or whatever. And the result will be that Oxfam, Christian Aid, Tear Fund, and others will be able to deliver less help into the world than they could a fortnight ago. So we really, when I think about those things and about the suffering that's going to be created, I think, Lord, do you know what? Your kingdom come. We just need you to sort it. Your kingdom come in all its fullness. But meanwhile, us disciples of you, we're going to bring what we can of your kingdom with your help and by the power of your Holy Spirit. So that's what we're going to be about. Your will, and the third, so that's it. May your name be honored as treasured as holy. May your kingdom come. Bring the day, Lord. And the third request in that first section is, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. To that I will return as I wrap up this morning's message later. But you see those three requests, which are about the glory of God. So the prayer starts by addressing God, the Father of us, the one in the heavens. And here are three things about God's holiness and sovereignty: that he be hallowed, that his kingdom come, and that his will be done. That's followed by three things focused not on his glory so much, but upon our human need. So that's what we're going to look at now. But I know you're fascinated to know, why have we got... Does anybody know what the bird is? It's a missel thrush. Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, it's a missel thrush. Oh, you did say that. Okay. Yeah. See me afterwards. You're cheating. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. And I know that you knew. Sometimes I'm making the missel thrush represent for me today the statement in Genesis that God has provided food for human beings, our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. That's what we're coming to. And in fact, food for all living things, a point which Jesus emphasized more than once to help us get our bearing. And that in Genesis 1, in that magnificent poem of God's creation and celebration of his ordering of things, there is this business of the food value of the seed-bearing plants and the berries and fruits that they produce and so forth, for all living things and for people as part of that wonderful ecological system. I've chosen the missel thrush this week because they have a habit which gets them a bad name when people notice it. People have said it to me. Do you know what? We've got this big thrush thing lives down the road from us. We watch it from the window. Every time any other bird comes into that bush, it flies and chases them out because it's bigger. But it doesn't eat any of the berries. It goes away and starts feeding somewhere else. It's just a dog danger. It's just mean and horrible. Doesn't want to eat the berries, doesn't want anybody else to eat it. But that's actually not what's going on. There's a thing about holly berries, because it's holly that missel thrushes choose for this primarily, and which is that they last the winter. I don't know if you've noticed. But most berries spoil under the frost and the freezing and so forth. But holly berries and a few others are adapted to handle the winter. And they're as good at the end of the winter as they are at the beginning of it. The missel thrush is saving them up for later. This is the missel thrush's deposit account. This is what he hopes never to have to eat this winter. But just in case, nobody else is allowed to eat it. He's saving those up. And when spring comes, if he hasn't used it up, he can use it to start getting in trim for all that's going to be demanded of him and his partner for the season ahead. So he's saving them. He's thinking carefully, if you like, ahead. Of course, I don't think a missel thrushes think, not in that sense, but is adapted to prepare, because one thing that if you're biological that you must have is food. If you're a living creature, you must eat. You must drink, right? You can only go a fairly short time, so it's about 3 days before not drinking will get your body into serious trouble. You can go for about 3 hours with your body too cold before it gets you into serious trouble. Typically, it depends on lots of circumstances. You can only go about 3 minutes without breathing oxygen in some shape or form without getting your body into serious trouble. Depends on some circumstances, but those are broadly true. But you can last a while without food because you'll use the food you've stored up in your body or on the holly bush or whatever. You can go for a while without eating, about 3 weeks before it starts to be really detrimental to your health, seriously detrimental, and you start taking risks. You must eat. And it is the bread that enables us to live, because bread in the Bible is the key food. Nearly all and the Bible covers a massive range of cultural changes and so forth over the time of the Bible. But for all the people of the Bible, and every stage across the hundreds of years that it covers, bread was the staple food for every meal and other things were added to it. Bread is critical. And Jesus, as he's in the wilderness, a time that we often remember during Lent, being tempted, Satan says to him, you, if you are who you think you are, you could turn the stones into bread and solve your hunger problem. Jesus says, actually, what I need is the word of God. Even more than I need the bread which sustains the body, I also need the bread which is for life eternal. And that's what really matters. He might be thinking of a passage in Job in which Job says, I have treasured the words of God's mouth more than my daily bread. But there are plenty of other passages in the Old Testament scriptures he might have been thinking about. Every living thing needs food. Life needs to be fed, and our life in God needs to be fed. And Jesus said that's even more important than our daily bread. The three petitions that come second in the Lord's Prayer, the first three requests are about God and his holiness and his sovereignty. The second three are about us, as I've said. And they go in a particular order. Our need for today, our needs left over from yesterday, and our needs for tomorrow and the future. So that's what we'll be looking at. And this week is our present need for provision to live today, to be fed, to have the basics of life so that we can stay alive and healthy. Next week, we'll take a look at what hangs on to us from the past, things in the past. I say, I don't need food for yesterday, do I? Right? I don't need food for tomorrow. That's tomorrow's problem. I need food today. Yesterday's all gone, except that people did some things that hurt and continue to trouble me. And I did some things that hurt and continue to trouble others. And yesterday, I may have received all kinds of injuries and troubles which are still with me. But fundamentally, I need to resolve the fact that what carries on from yesterday is, in a negative sense, are the things by which we hurt each other, our moral failure. And that's what I need to resolve from yesterday. And into the future, I therefore need to avoid the moral failure by being guided in the paths of God's righteousness, so he will lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, and so on. So that's how these three, the second three requests in the Lord's Prayer work. They're about us and our lives. And the first concerns the staple of living, bread. Bread in the Bible is a symbol for surviving each day. These were people for nearly the entire record of the biblical time who, when the harvest failed, didn't buy extra grain in from Canada or eat more rice from Southeast Asia. When the harvest failed in Palestine in biblical days, you watched your children hungry. You watched your elderly people unable to make it through this winter. You felt the pangs in your own stomach. You felt the weakness, and you may die as a result. You were in the deepest of troubles if the harvest was not a good harvest. If the water failed, if the locusts ate it, if something else went wrong. There were no alternatives much to lean upon. So people had this day-by-day constant awareness of their need for food. For us, cheap food, even if we find it hard to afford, has become so normalized that perhaps we don't think about it and value it and give God thanks for it as we might. In the tabernacle, the sort of mobile temple that the children of Israel used when they came out of Egypt from leaving the slavery of the past behind and headed for the promised land, they had this sort of mobile temple, a big tent. And every day was set out into that tent. In the holy section of that tent, the special place, was some loaves of freshly made bread. It was renewed every day. It was renewed as they did that journey across the wilderness. And then once, after some period of time, settled in the land, they built a temple along much the same design as the tabernacle. And each day, right up to the time of Jesus, and through the time of Jesus, fresh bread was taken by the priests and the Levites into the holy place and set before God. In fact, these three petitions about the present, the past, and the future are reflected in the temple furnishings, and may be behind Jesus' thinking in bringing us this prayer. Don't know. And I'm not sure we're going to have time to explore that theme, but you can read for yourself about what was in the holy place and how they might relate to these three petitions about our present, our past, and our future. But the temple was a place where fresh bread was placed. I think it's more or less saying, Lord, one more day has passed in which we've had the grain and we've been able to make bread. And the first portion of it, therefore, comes to you. You don't eat bread, you're God. But nonetheless, we put it out in the temple today as fresh bread. The priests will eat it later, but it's not going to go to waste. But right now, we present it to you. It's like a sacrifice. We put it in the holy place. And it's an acknowledgement that you've fed us. And it's a reminder, God, please remember every day our people need bread. Every day we need it. Please never forget. Lord, see our need for food. You built it into the way you do ecology in your creation. We have to eat. Please remember to give us each day our daily bread. So it's there as a constant in the worship life of Israel, because it's so essential, because the harvest is so vital, that talking about bread became the same thing as talking about life itself. Bread stands for life in the Bible, time and time again. Jesus said ultimately about that so memorably, and you'll hear it, you've heard it many times. I, said Jesus, bread of life. In other words, he's saying, just as you need physical bread, physical food, to sustain your biological life, so to participate in God's life, in the life that is eternal and generous and gracious, love-filled and righteous and good and forever. To share in God's life, you'll need the nutrition for that as well. I'm that. That's what I've come into this world to do. To give you the bread that doesn't spoil, the bread that doesn't go stale, and which will sustain your life, your deep life, your truly most deep soul human life, unto eternity and through this current scene as well. So it's absolutely essential, but Jesus was saying, don't forget that I won't turn bread into stones. There's something more important than staying alive. There's something more important than feeding this body until it dies. And that's the bread which is eternal, the life that is forever. And he said, that's what you need to focus on. But you do need your daily bread, and your Father knows what you need. Don't worry about it, but I give you a prayer to help mention it. So I thought it would be good for us to look at how our two churches this week have been engaged in daily bread. All right? How Cannington and Westfield together. So I've collected some statistics. Some of them are a little approximate, but they're fairly good. Right, this week, Westfield and Cannington between us served 250 pancakes, right? Because we had the Pancake Fun Day at Cannington and the Pancake Fun Day here at Westfield. And there were loads of people, so we had to serve 250 pancakes to make sure everybody got one. Well, there wasn't 250 there, because 20 of those, I think, went to the Tuesday coffee morning. You know who you are, and you were there, and you ate. And your church fed you. So, 250 pancakes this week, 8 slices or 8 helpings of pizza. I bet it was more than 8 slices for Youth Alpha, right? But Youth Alpha fed 8 people pizza. Our 2 lunch clubs, Cannington and Westfield, served over 70. It's actually just slightly over 70 full lunches this week. We didn't do toddlers this week, it was half term. And actually that statistic is wrong. It would be nearer 60 healthy toddler snacks, which Marion puts together and Sue Holmes puts together and so forth. Healthy snacks for toddlers. Yeah. So there's we took in our 6 trays, baker type trays. You know the trays which bakers use for bread. No, 6 trays of Fair Share food this week because that's a weekly delivery. Cannington Lunch Club pays for that, and the 2 churches have these 6 trays of food that supermarkets are dumping, right? And they've been persuaded to dump it to Fair Share Limited, who then distribute it to people who feed other people. So they give us our share, we pay the 500 quid a year, and then we get these 6 trays a week or thereabouts of Fair Share food. Supermarket dump stuff. Saves it going in the skip. We know that in our country, about 1/3 of the food that is made ready for people to eat is dumped or otherwise wasted. Right? So we're trying to be part of an action that slows down and reduces food waste. Most of the stuff we take from Fair Share on a weekly basis is all in date, and most of it is going to be in date for weeks yet. But it's being dumped otherwise into the skips and gone. So this week, we're able to pass some of that on together, though I'm not sure it's reached there yet, together with some other contributions to the food bank. We issued 5 food bank vouchers this week to people who come to us needing to use the food bank. You can't just show up at the food bank. You have to go and somebody needs to interview you and agree to give you a voucher and so forth. We're one of the outlets for food vouchers. And of course, not only do we support the food bank with food, but very importantly, we, through members who do this of our 2 churches, work in the food bank, give time to the food bank and energy and effort to make the food bank happen. If only there was time, I would like to tell you some things about who uses the food bank. You may be quite surprised about who needs to use the food bank. And a whole range of people have that need. And we are in the thick of that. During our drop-in service for homeless and rough sleepers, we served about 20 meals this week. And we also served 2 people who came in at other times hungry and needed food just to get on with the rest of the day and so forth. And when that happens, one of us stops and cooks them a food. We've got food ready and we can cook that fairly quickly and supply somebody with a meal. We did just 2 on that basis this week. Men's Cookery Group. I think it was 8 of you, was it, at Men's Cookery on Thursday? Yeah. It was. Neil's arrived and it was 8 of you, okay. But I believe you fed more than just 8 of you with the food. Okay, right. So that's not bad, is it? Oh, I've forgotten Cafe, which this week we believe will have done something like served. Here it goes. 80 sausages, 10 pounds of bacon, 84 eggs, 20 beef burgers, 15 kilograms of baked beans, 80 rolls, 15 kilograms of jacket potatoes, 30 panini, 2.5 kilograms of mushroom together with onion, salad, quiche, cake, etc., etc. And this week, it was 13 servings of our soup and roll deal, which is for 20 pence. And 2 of the people who had that, I was around and they said, well, what's the real price of your soup and roll here? And it goes on and on, isn't it, Judy? They will say it, yeah? Soup and roll, how much is it really? We say 20 pence. They say, no, but what's the real price? It's 20 pence. Yes. They want to know whether it's 1.20, 2.20 or 3.20, don't they? The answer is no, it's just 20. Anybody, just have soup and roll. And I say, not only that, it's not watery something. This is homemade on-site, nutritious and good. Or sometimes it's Fair Share soup or whatever. But this is a lunch. This will put you right for a good few hours. And this costs 20 pence because we feed people. because we're the people who pray, give us this day our daily bread. And if we're going to pray that, we need to think about who we are praying it for. So in conclusion, a couple of thoughts. One is that this is the prayer of the poor person of Jesus' day. People were paid each day because they weren't paid enough to wait till the end of the week to get their pay. Right? Didn't have that kind of leeway. Or pay at the end of the month. You couldn't wait that long. People did not have that cash flow. So day laborers were paid each day enough so that when they went home at the end of the day, they could buy bread for tomorrow. And one of the ways of translating, give us this day our daily bread, and it's an arguable translation of the Greek, is give us today our bread for tomorrow. It might be our bread for today or our bread for tomorrow. It's a little bit uncertain. But either way, the point is it's the day ration of bread that keeps me and my family alive. It's about life in the present. Jesus said, stop worrying about tomorrow's bread. If you have faith in God, you can live for the now. Focus on the present. Stop burning so much energy and concern about the future. Trust God for the future. He knows what you need. Ask for your bread each day. It would have been very economic of Jesus to say, why don't we just pray once? Lord, for the rest of my life, give me all I need to eat. End of prayer. And you need to pray that once, don't you? But this keeps us dependent upon God and aware of living in the present. And the life of faith, Jesus showed us, is very much about a life in the present. But here's the sting in the tail for today, because there's always one, isn't there? You know it's coming. And we have just prayed, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Can I pray, Lord, I want your will done on the earth, and I need food, but I don't care where it comes from. I won't read the label to see if it's associated with injustice. I won't mind if the farmers and workers who produced it are underpaid. I won't mind if, in fact, they go hungry or their children can't go to school. What I will mind is that it's cheap. That's what will be important to me. Lord, give me my food irrespective of who's had to suffer getting it to me. I don't want to think about that. Just want what I want today. Give me my luxuries, Lord. Give me my plenty. Sod the rest of them. They live far away and they're poor anyway. Can I pray that? Of course I can't pray that. If I've just prayed, let your will be done on the earth as it is in heaven, I can't then go and say, and give us today our daily bread, unless I mean all of us. The hungry child, the person living without the roof, the refugee, the farmer whose land has dried up because Westerners live with a heavy carbon footprint and now global warming has destroyed the quality of his land. I cannot pray, give us this day our daily bread, unless it is a prayer for others as for myself, and unless I'm going to live it. So here's the challenge, following on from what I said a couple of weeks ago and last week about Jesus and how Jesus would live my life. How would Jesus do your shopping? Right? How would Jesus do your shopping? Has to live in your house, has to feed whoever lives in your house and is on your shop, is involved in your shopping list, right? Has to go to the supermarket you go to or whatever it is you do. How would Jesus shop? Or as I've said before about a year ago, why not take Jesus shopping with you when you go? Make it an act of prayer and discipleship and devotion to do your weekly shopping or your daily shopping or whatever it is. And check that you're shopping like Jesus would do, with the thoughtfulness and care for others that Jesus would have if he was doing your weekly shop. That's my suggestion, that when you go shopping, whether it's online, at the supermarket, however you do it, How would Jesus do this? Jesus who said and taught me to pray, God's will be done on earth. And give us today our daily bread. Amen.